what if you could ask any question at all, to the whole universe, and that the universe would answer back to you? What question would you ask? I was faced, actually, a couple of years ago with a situation exactly like that. It was in the middle of the desert of Black Rock City in the USA, in a crazy festival called the Burning Man. And I got totally lost in a dust storm over there. So this is actually me, right there. And you couldn't see anything at all. I lost everybody. And suddenly, in the middle of nowhere, a telephone booth appeared in the desert. And on it, it was written, "Talk to God." Okay. So I'm laughing a lot at this, freaking out a little bit. And then I go to pick up the phone, and it starts ringing before I pick up. So I'm like, okay, I pick up the phone, and suddenly I hear a voice saying, "Hi, son. This is God. I love you. And you can ask me one question. What is it?" Tricky, isn't it? What would you ask? I guess I asked the classic philosophical question of all times. What is the meaning of existence? What is the meaning of life? Why on earth are we here? But God did not answer. He, or she actually, helped me to find my own answer, my own solution to my question. And isn't that the real meaning of life? To create? To create, actually, your own meaning. I think that is actually the root of our freedom. Because when you think about it, we are always free to some extent. Even when things are hard, we are free in the way we react to them. So you're free to accept the status quo as it is, or you're free to create an alternative to it. I think what I'm saying to you is that you have impact. Everything has impact. And we constantly reshape the reality we live in. Your actions, your choices, your non-actions, your non-choices, the way you consume, the way you produce, the way you work, the way you relate to others, all this has impact. But are we aware of the impact we're having in this world, on our own life and on society? Are we mindful of this? I remember a discussion I had with a friend of mine back at university. So we were like thinking about, okay, what are we going to do in our life? What are our dreams? What job are we going to do? And so at the time I was like, yeah, let's, change the world and everything. And he looked at me and was like, yeah, how do you want to do that? These are two big problems, poverty, climate change, all these things. This is huge. It's not our problem. We can't do anything about it. And my friend actually ended up working as an investment banker. And a couple of years later, he was contributing to the biggest financial crisis of our time. But he was not aware that the decision he had made at that time was going to have that impact. Now, when we get together, we don't just create our own life. We actually co-create the society we live in, a little bit as if we were collectively social architects, every one of us. And that means that we have a big responsibility. The current capitalist global society we live in is not actually a given. It's not a dead end, and it's clearly not the end of social improvement. What it is, it's a construction. And the intellectuals, the scientists, the politicians, the entrepreneurs who came up with that system had a worldview, basically, and on this worldview, they built a system to function in a particular way. And don't get me wrong, capitalism brought us huge progress, much better living conditions, of course, but it's not the end of social improvement. This will be a perpetual process. And are we content with the way things are, about the huge unemployment that there is, the migrant crisis, poverty everywhere, or not everywhere, but too much, and the climate change crisis, which is the biggest unprecedented danger we're ever facing, are we content about that, or do we want to do something about it? For years now, social entrepreneurs all over the world have been trying to build a different model, an alternative to the economic system we have at the moment, an alternative where basically it's more inclusive, it's fairer, it's more respectful of society and of the environment. What social entrepreneurs do, actually, is they don't oppose economic value and social value. They reconcile them together. And by doing so, this is so much closer to our human nature and to our aspiration. Of course, we want to make a living. We need to make money and we want to. But at the same time, we also want to have an impact, have a meaningful life, and take care of where we live. And these two things can be done together. It's just that instead of having profit for profit, you also make money to have a positive impact and you're aware of what you do. So, this man is Mohammed Yunus, and I had the chance to do an internship for him a couple of years ago. In 2006, he received the Nobel Peace Prize for what he did as a social enterprise in Bangladesh and now all over the world. He came back to Bangladesh. He was a professor of economics in the US, where he grew up, and he saw huge poverty everywhere. And some people earning just a couple of dollars per day, right? And he was shocked by the fact that these people could not even buy the tools to actually grow vegetables and fruits for themselves, to nourish themselves, but also actually to sell at the market and make some money. So he asked them, okay, how much money do you need? And some of the answers were ridiculous for him. I need $10, $20, just a little bit, a small, tiny loan. Of course, if you think with a traditional mindset of economics, that makes no sense. You will never lend money to insolvent people. Now, if you think as a social entrepreneur, you're actually thinking, okay, that man is on his own, so that's $1. But 10,000 of these people is $10,000. 1 million of poor people with $1 is $1 million. So if you actually lend to the community and not to one person, then this can work. And that's what he did. He lended tiny loans to communities, and he lended to women. And that changed the entire social architecture and power relationships in these communities. So now microfinance spread all over the world. And it's one step out of poverty. It's not the end, of course. But so I'm like, okay, wait a second. So now, this is it, right? That's the revolution we were waiting for. That is the next improvement on capitalism, right? But this has been going on for years. And we are still in a very marginal movement. The social economy, more or less, in developed countries, is around 10% of the economy max. So here's the question. Are we always going to be a marginal phenomenon? Is this just 10% of the economy and that's it? Or can it spread to the whole economy, to whole society? So that was a question I was really wondering. And when I was a student, I actually did research on that, and I made a small discovery. And I'd like to share it with you. Let me demonstrate. If you go to the shop, all right, and you want to buy a chocolate bar, and you see a fair trade chocolate bar, do you actually trust that this will have the impact it says it will have on local people, local producers in developing countries? A small percentage of people are going to believe that, and they're going to buy that bar. But many and most people will doubt it because they don't see the impact, so they don't trust it. And they probably will buy the for-profit company-produced chocolate bar without realizing that by doing that, the impact of that chocolate bar might be devastating for the environment and for the labor policies in developing countries. We are not aware of the power we are having. So the problem is this. Simple. Trust. Trust in the change that you're offering. As a social architect, as a social entrepreneur, as anybody who wants to do something, basically be aware of that. Creating change is not enough. It won't spread. It will remain marginal if you don't create trust in it and make it visible. So this guy is George Akerlof. He got the Nobel Economics Prize in the 60s for a very interesting theory that I used for us. Well, clearly George didn't care about social economy. That was not his thing. But he cared about markets in which there is demand for a product, but they don't develop. They stay marginal for some reason. And he studied the market of second-hand cars. So basically, you use a car, and then you sell it. Now, the problem is that many people want to sell a used car, many people want to buy a used car, but that market is marginal. It doesn't develop for some reason. How comes? Well, because you have good cars and you have bad cars when they come out of the factory. And the problem is that you have no clue how to trust if it's a good or a bad one until you have tried it for a while. Because of that problem of trust in the quality of the car, in the product, people are not really eager to buy, or they will reduce heavily the willingness to pay. And the deal will not be made, and basically the market won't develop, even if you have demand for it. So now, I'm very much afraid that this is exactly the situation in which social and environmental products and services basically are in. If you go back to the shop, and I would tell you that, on this fair trade chocolate bar, we build a standard with everybody, all the stakeholders, in a public way, okay, with institutions. And we co-created that standard, and we can trust it. And you can check, basically, that standard. It would say, for example, on the bar, when you buy this, you have 1,000 impact points, let's say. And you could check what these 1,000 impact points really mean, and you would believe it. And then you would look at the purely for-profit chocolate bar produced, and it would say minus 500 impact points. If you would believe in that standard, suddenly that would change a lot your consumption. So we need to create such a mechanism. Basically, with this in mind, we co-created with some of my friends, Nicolas, Pierre-Julien, and Dasha, a social enterprise when we came out of university. It's called Transparency at Work. We thought, okay, it's going to be super difficult to get a job after studies. Why? Because clearly, let's face it, studies are not sufficient to get a job nowadays. If you don't actually do some internships, some apprenticeships, different precarious conditions, you don't get the skills now required by employers to get a proper job. The problem is the same. You have good employers which train you well, pay you well, who want to give you a proper job, and you have bad employers who clearly abuse the unemployment crisis. They don't pay you, they give you precarious contracts, they don't train you, then you're back to square one, and you can't get into youth employment in the market. So we said, okay, but some are good, right? So how do you differentiate? And the problem is you have all these big companies which spend a lot of money in recruitment, but do you believe that they are the best companies just because they pay a marketing agency that tells you this is the employer of the year? So we went around around Europe, and we co-created a standard with every stakeholder, 30 partners in 6 countries, funded by the European Union, with employers, universities, youth NGOs, everyone connected. And we created a standard on which basically young people and employees can rate their labor conditions online. And basically this is transparency at work. You have 6 criteria, and you have basically 23 key performance indicators on which you can rate. It's fully anonymous, so you can do it basically without being scared of being found out. And these are based on the same criteria, which are very objective, that the companies can commit to respect. But it's not just a label for the companies, because if they don't respect it, we get to know about it from the ratings, which are public and transparent. Now, for good companies, this is amazing. They don't have to spend €1 in recruitment. They just have to prove that they are good, and that's it. Okay? So here's what we try to do. Create a transparent labor market where any company, doesn't have to be the big ones, can signal in a trusted way how good they are. And then you will be able to find them, to work for them. The good news is that, and that's the innovation here, is that we did that for the first time. It's a decentralized database. So we created a technology, a rating system that you can install on every, basically, job board, university websites, youth NGO websites, everywhere, and you can translate in different languages. And the great thing is, thanks to Mladi Plus for this a lot, we are launching in Slovenia, and we hope this is going to be a great success here as well. We're still at the beginning, but this participatory database will be the first time ever, public, transparent, and this will allow for social mobility in Europe. So if we make this together, that can be a huge change. I'd like to leave you with one final thought, is that everything you do has impact. Be aware of it. And if you want to change something and spread that impact, remember this theory for social architects. Of course, create change. Find a problem that you want to solve it. But that is not sufficient. Measure the change. And once you measure the change, make it trusted by all the stakeholders, ensure transparency to make sure, basically, that this will always be checked and there is no doubt, and then make it visible super simply. Thank you so much.
Okay.